I will turn the microphone on. I have a green light. I'm on. Good morning. How is everybody today? I'm so happy. It's cloudy. It's been raining. It feels like home. When I was first candidating for this job, the drought was going on, and I was talking to Mary and a couple of other people, and I said, I have this great rain consciousness. When I moved over to Clarkston, Washington, they hadn't had any rain for a while, and they had the wettest spring ever right after I moved there. So I said, I'll just bring rain to, I have a great rain consciousness, I'll bring rain here. And I have. It's just taken 6 months. And a change of seasons and all that stuff. So I can't take any responsibility whatsoever for this, but I'm grateful we're having it. So today is Resistance is Futile, and a couple of people have already asked me, where's my Borg mask? And the truth is I resisted the idea so much that I didn't get around to actually ordering it on Amazon to bring it in time. So, but there is one. So I can say, I am one of 5, a Borg. You will be assimilated into the high mind, and resistance is futile. So the Borg, if you remember from the Star Trek, how many of you remember the Borg? How many of you know who the Borg are? Some people do, and some just don't. Okay. Well, for those of you who don't, I can't help you. I'm sorry. In Star Trek The Next Generation, the Borg were this evil sort of hive mind, the ultimate villain. I think they were considered one of the 4 best villains ever in all of television history in one of the studies that I saw, or one of the things that I saw, surveys that I saw. And they went around and assimilated other cultures because they wanted to add to their perfection. They wanted to become perfect. And out of that idea is the idea that, guess what? We're not good enough. We're not perfect, and we don't even have perfection within us, so we have to go out and get it. Anybody relate? Besides me? How many times have we gone out trying to assimilate things from other people and other cultures and other ideas because I'm not good enough, I'm not perfect enough. What I love about the young adult program that we're doing is back when I was that age, I was still running around trying to absorb other things, substances sometimes, to help myself feel more perfect and better. And I'm so grateful that we're doing the young adult program. And my friend and I went through practitioner studies with a woman named Linda Rapond up in Seattle, and she's actually the person who, after being the youth coordinator for the United Centers for Spiritual Living for a bunch of years, said, the problem is that we have great programs for our youth, and then at 19 years old we just drop them. And there's nothing else left until they hit back about 45 years old. They show up as, parents with kids and going, I need to get back to that church, And so what I love is she quit that job and she decided to go establish the launching pad in Berkeley, and started that off as an intentional community, a house to live in that did services. And literally young adults who had been part of the youth program from all over the country moved into there. I mean, they came from Philadelphia, I think Joe Murray and other places and like that, moved into there and started this off and launched this. And so now she's recently decided that the idea is bigger than she is, and she's letting go of the launching pad in Berkeley and starting to launch launching pads. And that's where we met Firefly and Alana. They're the intentional people who are doing this up in Ashland. And I know that Sally Foster, Sally, I saw you here, yeah, and a couple other people, Gloria and Bonnie Metcalf and I went up for their initial fundraising concert that launched it off. They've had a training program for young adults that Gene Houston co-facilitated. I know Dr. John Waterhouse, our president, was a guest speaker up there, and all sorts of stuff. So these people are moving and shaking. They look like these couple of nice, sweet, demure little girls. They're moving and shaking the place, okay? So don't let that fool you. So I'm glad. So they are not in resistance. Well, you probably have a lot of resistance sometimes, but but you don't let it own you.
Exactly.
So I had a whole different talk in mind when I first saw this title, and this past week I was on the president's call with Dr. John Waterhouse always does a president's call for the organization. They were interviewing Dr. Roger Teal, who's a senior minister for Mile High Church, which is the biggest church in our movement. And he's just recently coming out with a book, due, I believe, next week, if I remember right, this coming week. And he talked about this book that he had read that had helped him work through his resistance, and it's called The War of Art. Not The Art of War, that's Sun Tzu, but The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And some of you may know Stephen Pressfield, you may not ever have heard the name, but how many of you have ever heard The Legend of Bagger Vance or saw the movie with Matt Damon and Will Smith and Charlize, yeah, that one. Say it again. Yes, Charlize Theron, yeah. Fabulous movie, fabulous book. He wrote the book, and he's written a couple of other things. He's written a couple of movies. And what he talks about is resistance. One of his great quotes I have from here is, most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two stands resistance. So I thought today what we would do is take a look and stare resistance right in the face and take it down as much as we can in our lives. Does that sound good? Yeah. Because most of us want to live the life that's within us. It's the capital L life. It's the life of spirit that wants to come out with us. So here's what he says about resistance. Resistance is the most toxic force on the planet. You know, it reminds me of the old phrase, the road to heaven or hell, depending on which one, is paved with good intentions. And where we don't embody our intentions, the reason we don't embody our intentions is resistance. It is the root of more unhappiness than poverty, disease, and erectile dysfunction. To yield to, that's his quote, to yield to resistance deforms our spirit. It stunts us and makes us less than we are and we're born to be. Take a breath. So the opposite of resistance is genius. You know, we talked a few months ago about working in our zone of genius. We talked a couple of weeks ago about living in our creativity and letting it flow. Genius is a Latin word, and what it stands for is that inner spirit within us that calls us out, that calls for us to be who we want to be, that says, there's the wonderful phrase in the Kabbalah that there's an angel standing over every blade of grass going, grow, grow. And so that genius within us is that inner spirit that is saying to us, grow, express, be you. Okay? It's our North Star. It's that center of our soul that calls us, and each of us has it. It's the place where our true inspiration comes from. But the light of genius also has a dark side. It casts a shadow. Every bright light casts a shadow, right? And so, if there's some bright lights shining on me right now, and I bet you, there's a shadow right over there. And so every bright light casts a shadow, and the shadow of genius is resistance. And so we can either, as the reading said, focus on where we want to go, or we can focus on the shadow and stay in resistance. And so when we look at the shadow, when we stay in that, this resistance jumps in at the slightest hint of going for our genius. As soon as you go for your genius, guess what you encounter right away? Resistance. Boom. In fact, if you want to know what your genius is, just notice what you're resisting the most. Okay? Whenever you get off track, whenever you get distracted, whenever, I'd rather go, have a root canal than do this. He gives an example in the book here he said Adolf Hitler actually wanted to be an artist. He spent all of his inheritance to enroll in the art school and did all this stuff. And he said, how many paintings of Hitler have you ever seen, or by Hitler have you ever seen? None. And he said his hypothesis is it was easier for Hitler to start World War II than it was to face a blank canvas and paint. Now that may be an exaggeration, but a lot of us have done similar things. When we're faced with our genius, when we're faced with what is it that really wants to come through us, we'd rather go clean the house or the garage or meddle in somebody else's business or watch TV, or do anything but do what it is we're supposed to do. There's a wonderful list that he has here. He says, the pursuit of any calling. How do you know when you're hitting your resistance? The pursuit of any calling in writing, painting, music, film, dance, or any creative art, however marginal or unconventional. I know Reverend Mary just finished a couple of books, and I bet you along the way she encountered a little bit of resistance in the process. Yes. Number 2, the launching of any entrepreneurial venture or enterprise for profit or otherwise. Number 3, any diet or health regimen. Number 4, this will resonate here, any program of spiritual advancement. How's your meditation practice going? How's your showing up in classes going? Yeah, so far so good over there. Number 5, this is the one that hurt. This is the one that hurt. Any activity whose aim is tighter abdominals. I've been saying for 3 months I'm going to sign up for the Sun Oaks Gym. I still haven't signed up for the Sun Oaks Gym. Number 6, any course or program designed to overcome an unwholesome habit or addiction. Number 7, education of every kind. How many of you have been putting stuff off, whether it's a class here or that college course you want to take or the language you want to learn? 8, any act of political, moral, or ethical courage, including the decision to change for the better some unworthy pattern of thought or conduct within ourselves. Ouch. Number 9, the undertaking of any enterprise or endeavor whose aim is to help others. 10, any act that entails commitment of the heart. The decision to get married, to have a child, to weather a rocky patch in a relationship, I might add, or to get back into a relationship after you've been hurt in one. Number 11, the taking of any principled stand in the face of adversity. In other words, any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity. Or expressed another way, any act that derives from our higher nature instead of our lower, any of these will elicit resistance. Take a breath. Maybe a couple deep breaths after all that. Anybody relate to at least one of those besides me? I had several on that list, yeah. And so let's take a look at resistance. What does it look like? Well, first of all, resistance is, and the reason we want to look at resistance, I'm going to look at this because the Dalai Lama has this great saying that says, the enemy is a great teacher. The enemy is a great teacher. You know, we've heard know your enemy in other cases. I think that might even be out of the art of war. But the enemy is a great teacher, so we should look at it, we should study it. First of all, resistance shoves us away from our good. It shoves us away from our essential self. And the cool thing about that is, that gives you a clue of what your essential self is. You notice what it is that you spend the most time doing the practices of resistance in, and that's exactly where your North Star is. That's exactly where you want to go. Okay? So that we can use that. Secondly, about resistance, it's internal. There's no external force out there. We generate our own resistance. We generate it out of fear. It's fueled by fear. And if we master the fear, we master resistance. Those who went through the Prosperity Plus class learned the wonderful phrase, do it afraid. You know, we don't have to, when I say master the fear, that doesn't mean we get rid of all the fear. You know, I think it was Henry Fonda used to still throw up in his dressing room at 75 years old prior to taking the stage because he was still having butterflies and fear of performance. And then, of course, he would go out on stage and perform fabulously. Okay? So we're never over the fear, but we master the fear. We do it afraid. Resistance is insidious and implacable. It never sleeps. Reminds me of that wonderful Neil Young album, Rust Never Sleeps, you know? And it's the rust for our dreams. That's what resistance is. It rusts our dreams. And we can resist, we can procrastinate, we can put it off until we die. It's most powerful at the finish line. When we're close to actually finishing our project, if we've gotten over the resistance and we're going for it, it's most powerful at the finish line. You know, the Israelites hit the promised land real early in their journey. I mean, about 2 months into their journey. But they walked into the promised land, they sent scouts in, and they were in such resistance about the quality of the promised land that they then had to go wander around for 40 years until that resistance died off. Moses included. Okay? Odysseus, on his way back from the wars of Greece and Troy, heading to Ithaca, got to within sight of the shores of Ithaca. He could see the campfires of his people, of his family on the shore. He decided to take a nap. and let the sailors sail the boat the rest of the way in. Well, there was this particular bag that he had that he'd always protected, and they didn't know what it was, and they figured it was a pot of gold. Well, they went in and opened it up, and it turned out what it was on one of his stops along the way, the king of winds had bagged up all the adverse winds so that he would have fair winds, put them in this bag. And the sailors opened the bag, thinking it was a pot of gold, and it blew them back to where they started. And it took years, and not a single sailor survived. It was only Odysseus himself who got to the shore again. So it's the strongest at the finish. I can't tell you how many times when I'm writing a talk, I'm almost done with it, and all of a sudden I want to play a game on my computer. All of a sudden, chocolate sounds really good. Maybe I should go home and have dinner, and I can come back and finish this later. Finally, it triggers resistance in others. We're going along, we've got our resistance finished, handled, and we're going along. But others, it gets their resistance triggered, because as we start to grow into our greatness, one of two things happens to the people around us. Either they get inspired and grow into their greatness with us, or they get triggered and push us back and don't want to let us grow. It's been said that you can have a pot of crabs, live crabs, with just a low edge around them, and none of the crabs will escape, because the minute one starts to get out, the others will pull it back. And so we have friends like this, right? Who do you think you are? Why do you want to do that dream? Stay safe. That job's not so bad. You should be grateful you have that job. You should be grateful you have that relationship. You should be grateful, whatever. We don't move out. And so we trigger that off in other people around us. So that's what it looks like, that's what it feels like and looks like. What are some of the symptoms of resistance? How do you know when you're in it? Number one symptom begins with a P. Procrastination. Procrastination. We should do a song. Procrastination. It's making me late. Anyway. We keep putting things off. You ever notice somebody who gets a diagnosis, they've got 6 months to live? They do one of two things. Either they quit or they start living full out. They quit that job they never liked anyways. They go in and they start running country western songs they wanted, or they go, do whatever it is that was their heart's desire and say, I only got 6 months to live. I got to, go deal with something about it. And what usually happens, what oftentimes happens? They recover. Because suddenly they're doing the work they want to do. Out of procrastination and its right-hand companion, rationalization, it makes so much sense not to do that right now. I can think of so many reasons not to do that right now. It's not a good time. The economy is not right. The sky is not. The stars aren't in alignment. My friends. I don't have the right friends. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the college education. Rationalization. Okay, and it sounds so simple. My wife is 8 months pregnant. He gives the example. That's one of the examples he gives in there. And he says Tolstoy had 13 kids and still wrote War and Peace. Maybe because he had 13 kids, he wrote War and Peace. I don't know, but So rationalization and procrastination. We can procrastinate until we're dead. I invite you not to. Another one is sex, drugs, TV, food, shopping, sleep. Anything that you're doing to avoid, and you know how you're doing it because it leaves you feeling hollow afterwards. It leaves you feeling hollow afterwards because you know that something else within you really wanted to come forward. Now, just because you're shopping doesn't mean you're in resistance. I'm going off to the minister's convo pretty much right after the service down in California, and I needed to upgrade my wardrobe a little bit so I'd look sort of presentable because I don't have a whole lot of casual clothes that look presentable right now. And so, the other day I went shopping, but I went shopping for a purpose. I wasn't avoiding anything. I've actually been avoiding shopping for a couple of weeks because I didn't want to spend the money. Now, I have plenty of money. The old patterning said, be careful. Any of that stuff. Another one is creating trouble. Drama, anything that gets attention and instant gratification. How many of you have suddenly created a problem in your life, consciously or unconsciously, to avoid doing, I've got to fix that leaking roof. Being a victim. That's a great way to avoid living your life, isn't it? Being a victim. You know people like this. I know nobody here, but you know people like this, right? Self-medication. Pressfield used to be a copywriter and in an earlier life, and he said he had a boss who said, basically, go out and invent a disease and we can sell the cure. He named off a bunch of diseases. SAD, what do you call it, the seasonal affective disorder, and a couple others. He said those are actually marketing inventions. There's no doctor who's ever diagnosed somebody, created that diagnosis. They were marketing inventions. So it's saying you can medicate and sell medication. Take a breath in case anybody is caught up in that process. I had a friend I was just doing a prayer for yesterday. The light of Spirit is on all the time. And we're paying attention to that light within us. And we're so enthused in our living our lives, it doesn't matter what the season is doing around us, right? You ever been in that enthused place and you don't care whether it's raining or sunny? Yeah? You're going to do it anyways. Choosing an unsupportive mate. Choosing an unsupportive mate. And the counter to that is choosing a mate that you're supporting them in being their artistry, their true self. You're busy supporting them. This is artists' wives and husbands, preachers' wives and husbands. Anybody who's supporting somebody else in being their fullness of themselves is a person who's in resistance to their own fullness, to their own life energy. Take a breath. Criticism or gossip is another symptom of being in resistance. Self-realized people are too busy. They're too busy creating to care about criticism and gossip. So what that's, George Clooney cheated on his new wife or whatever, Being a star. When I was in my 20s, I had a friend who, which was the early 70s, I had a friend who liked to walk around with a guitar case with a guitar in it. He called himself a musician, and he never once took that guitar out of the case because he couldn't play it. But he could pick up chicks with it really well because he looked good. He looked right. He sounded right. He was a star. There are people who, I'm a writer. You ever notice people who are, I'm a writer, they got the right scarf, they got the perfect little hat, they hang around the right coffee shop, they do all that stuff, excepting what they don't do, Mary, is? Right. See, Mary's a writer not because she says she is, but because she's got several books published and has done it. Another one is healing. We can get involved in healing. I've got to be perfect. I've got to heal this before I can live my life in full. I know none of you again, but you've met people. Okay? I've got to heal that issue before I can. No. The counter to the friend of doing it afraid is that the athlete plays hurt. We play hurt. If I waited till I was perfect to be a minister, I wouldn't be here today. Right? I hope you all know that. Because you think I'm perfect, I'm not. Just ask these guys over here, they know me more closely. Okay? If we wait till we're perfect, we'll never do it. If these two fine young ladies waited until they were perfect musicians and perfect poets, they'd never do it. So we do it. Hurt. We do it just as we are. And finally, looking for support. I'm out there looking for somebody to support me. Until I can find somebody to support me, the right workshop, the right person, the right sugar daddy or sugar mama, I can't do it. So how do we defeat resistance? Okay, enough of that stuff. How do we defeat resistance? Let's get on to the good stuff, David, right? I love this quote. Defeating resistance is like giving birth. It seems absolutely impossible until you remember that women have been pulling it off successfully with support and without for 50 million years. We see that people have beaten resistance because books do get published, works of art do get created, songs do get written, wonderful things do come out of people, they do defeat the resistance. And how do we do that? I love it. Stephen Pressfield says, we turn pro. We turn pro. And what that simply means is we take a stand that we are going to do what we are going to do in the face of all the resistance, in the face of all the stuff that comes up. We're still going to do it. I've got a couple of friends of mine who are ministers not of churches or guest speak once in a big while, maybe once every 6 weeks or once every 6 months or something like that. They say, how do you write a talk every single Sunday? I said, I sit down and do it. Some are better than others, but I still sit down and do it. Mary didn't worry about the book she's writing. These guys, and there's 2 musicians over here too, don't worry about the songs they're writing. They sit down and write a song. So we go pro. Telamon of Arcadia, who was a mercenary warrior back in the 5th century, said, it is one thing to study war and another to live the warrior's life. And so we begin to live the life of the person who is doing what they want to do. We begin to live that unlived life. Mary Morrissey says we can't get there from here, we have to get there from there. We start to live the life that we choose to live, no matter what the stuff is in the way. We put ourselves in that life, and we don't advertise it, we don't sit there and be the star, we sit there and make the commitment. I'm going to sit down every day, I'm going to do my spiritual practice. I'm going to face that blank page in my typewriter or my songbook. I'm going to face that blank canvas. I'm going to do whatever it is that I'm called to do, whatever it is that is mine to do on a daily basis. No matter how I feel, no matter how I look, and no matter how it looks, and no matter what other people around me say. Okay? So we turn pro. We know the difference between things that are urgent and important, and we do what's important. And what's important is the expression of our true nature. That's why you're here. That is why you're here. There's always urgent things that have to come up. Sometimes there are our urgencies, sometimes there are other people's urgencies, and we still show up and do what's important. That's what the pro does. The amateur gets involved in the urgents and never gets to the important. And so you establish, what is my vision? Why am I here? What is it that it's important for me to do? What is it that if I'm on my deathbed at the end of my life, looking back, I say, this was what I was supposed to do. And then we can either say, and I did it, or we can say, dang, I better come back and try it again. Hope I get a chance to come back and try it again. Okay? So ask yourself, what is it that if it's not done by you, by the end of your life, you're going to feel really ticked off about, or really sad, or really unhappy about? And that's what you start working on, and you start working on it today. There you go. Here's one that we don't talk about very often in religious science. Dirty word. It's a 6-letter dirty word. We learn to suffer. Take a breath. Did you ever suffer at the typewriter? I suffered writing talks. You're sitting there going, this sounds like crap. What am I going to write? I think I need to start it all over again. Last week I was a speaker up in Eugene at the Northwest New Thought Rally. I was speaking right before the president of the overall thing. The whole Centers for Spiritual Living, the overall thing. The Centers for Spiritual Living, Dr. John Waterhouse. And I went up there knowing that the talk that I had written wasn't the talk I was going to give. I knew it already. As soon as I wrote it, I went, yeah, it's good, yeah, it's on target, yeah, it's on topic, but no, it's not the one I'm going to give. And finally, 3 hours before I was supposed to give the talk, I went out and walked their labyrinth, and it downloaded the talk I was supposed to give. Okay? You have to walk out and be able to and be willing to do that. You have to be able to hang yourself out on the line, and you have to learn to suffer. You have to learn to sit in that angsty stage of allowing it to come through. Many of you know I'm a bike racer fan, and they talk about bicycle racers, and the best of them are willing to suffer to get to their point. I was watching the World Championships are going on, the men's just finished up a couple hours ago. But there's this woman who was the time trial champion who came in last weekend and was literally crying on the ground from the pain. She just won, by the way. But she was just sitting there crying from the pain that she had just put her body through of an hour of just flat out riding as fast as she could. Okay? Are we willing to suffer and to walk through that process to create what we want? Take a breath. Okay? Practice patience. We have to be in it for the long haul. We talked earlier about resistance is implacable. It keeps on coming on. We have to keep on coming on also. Okay? We stand there and we keep going and we keep going, and we don't look at outer results to judge. We just keep going. The first thing that most writers turn out is not the best thing that they've ever written. Once a big while, you get somebody who lucks out. But Pressfield talked about the first movie he ever wrote was King Kong Lives. He said they invited all their friends to the preview, and he co-wrote it with somebody else who went on to write, I think it was Alien and something else, was his co-writer. But they invited all their friends, and even their friends wouldn't show up for the movie. He said he thought maybe it was just in the inner city that they didn't like it, so he went out to one of the suburbs and asked one of the kids at the popcorn stand about the movie, and he goes, "Oh, it sucks, don't go to that one." Okay? So we got to start somewhere. He says, I haven't had my success, but now I've had my biggest failure. We have no excuses. We don't accept excuses. We can always come up with excuses, but we don't accept them. We play it as it lays. In golf, when the ball lands, it doesn't matter whether the wind's blowing or not. You've got to figure out how to get the ball in the hole, and you compensate for the wind. I was watching the World Championship races, earlier before I came here, and it's pouring down rain in Spain where they're racing. So the rain in Spain falls anyway, and causes pain. They don't stop. Unlike baseball, where if it rains, a couple of sprinkles, they quit playing, baseball. If you ever notice, they don't stop. We don't let the outer conditions determine what's going to go on for us. We play it as it lays. We master our technique. We get good help, and we don't take things personally. So this week I have homework for you, as always. Usually I do 3, but this time there's only 2. I'm going to make it simpler. Number 1, listen and find out what is yours to do. What is it that wants to come through you? What is it that, if you're at the end of your life, looking back, you say, I'm so glad I did that. That was the most important thing in my life. And number 2, do it. Start today, start tomorrow, do it. We willing to do that homework? Yes. All right. It is a commonplace among artists and children of play that they're not aware of time or solitude while they're chasing their vision. The hours fly. The sculptress and the tree-climbing tyke both look up blinking when Mom calls supper time. That's when you know you're in your essence. Is when you suddenly look up and you realize, oh my God, I've just spent 4 hours. And I don't know where it went. But I knew I was in my right place. That's what I invite you into. Let's do a prayer. So I know that there is only that one infinite presence. It is the pure life, capital L, life energy of this universe. Constantly and always expressing its full nature. And its nature is always for love. Its nature is for light. Its nature is for joy. Its nature is for the further expression of its bliss. Its nature is for the further expression of its creativity and its good, capital G, good. That life energy, that one, is all that there is. There is nothing outside of it. There is nothing in opposition to it. It is just being the life that it is. And I know that because that one is infinite, that we are and can only be one of that one life. We are it already. We are that capital L life being lived out loud, in form. And so I speak my word that each of us today says yes. We look resistance in the face and we kick it in the gut and we walk on past it. And we say yes to the capital L life that wants to come through us. Yes, in a bigger way than ever before. We allow ourselves to be assimilated into the high mind of the divine. And when we face that, when we are standing in that one mind, when we are standing in that and saying, yes, I allow this to live my life as me, then truly resistance is futile. It has no place, and it fades away. So I speak my word that each of us takes that stand. Each of us goes pro with God, as God. That we are the athletes, we are the artists, we are the creative individuals that are expressing and manifesting heaven on earth right here and right now. That we're not waiting for somebody else, we're not waiting for another time, we're not waiting anymore. We are saying yes this day, that this is the truth of us, and we have waited long enough. And today, right now, we do it. And for the doing this, and for the good that comes out of that, I am ever so grateful. I release that process of how it shows up, of what shows up, into that law that is spirit-informed, that is the process of creation, and let it do the work, but we plant the seed. We allow that seed to grow, and it does. And so it is. Thank you.